So, the next thing on the agenda is our panel discussion, which will be led by the human-centered design and community building professional, Dungyov. He has been instrumental in shaping UX practices as co-founder of Figmaster, where he is helping build Bulgaria's thriving Figma community. His work spans across mentoring, teaching, and bringing people together to solve complex design challenges. Today, he'll be moderating our powerful panel discussion on breaking boundaries. Should we democratize user research? I'm leaving the audience to yourself and making my way out of the picture.
Thank you very much. Ooh, that's loud. So, hello everyone. Welcome to what promises to be a lively discussion on democratizing user research. Now, I know democratizing can sound like we are campaigning for our office, but don't worry, we are not about to throw heads or counting votes here. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and sometimes controversial idea of opening up user research to more people within our organizations. So you might be wondering, like, why bother? Why let non-researchers in our methods and practices? Well, democratization has its potential benefits, but it can also feel a bit like letting a toddler drive your car. Exciting, unpredictable, and sometimes downright scary. And who better to navigate us through this terrain than our amazing panelists who bring wealth of knowledge and experience in user research. So, without further ado, let me introduce our panelists who are here to help us figure out whether democratization on the user research is a brilliant move or a cautionary tale. So, I'll begin with Victoria Tsurova. First, she's an ex-lead and UX researcher at VMware and the co-founder of UX Scale-Up. Victoria has a rich background in building and scaling user research teams, so she knows the ins and outs of making user research accessible without sacrificing quality. Victoria, welcome. Have a seat. Next, we have Raya Raicheva, the head of user research at Simply Business. With experience in leading user research in a dynamic business environment, Raya has first-hand insights in leading UX research in a dynamic business environment, practically of fast-moving teams, so we're thrilled to have her here. Please, Raya. Thank you. Have a seat somewhere. Next, we have Adele Myers, joining us far from South Africa, as you heard just before. UX research lead at Discovery Limited, now UX research professional, specialist, yes. Adele brings us a deep understanding of the role of research plays in highly innovative, data-driven industries and the challenge of maintaining quality when more people participate in research efforts. Adele, it's great to have you. Take a seat, wherever you like it. And last but not least, we have Petya Parvanova, Chief Operating Officer and Partner at Maquette. Petya has a unique perspective from both a leadership and consultancy role, offering her expertise on how democratizing research impacts outsourcing and client strategies. We're lucky to have her insights today. So, Petya, please. All right, take a seat. I'll take a seat as well, yeah. So the first thing that I want to ask you ladies is, why do we need research at all? Can somebody enlighten me? Yes, let's go. But I think we don't have a microphone, so, okay, of course, technical stuff all along the way. Here the help comes.
This is why we need research.
Can you hear me? You can hear
Yes,
me
we can.
Yeah.
So Vicky?
I'll just ask a question back. And in a world where data is literally everything and we need it everywhere, why wouldn't we need research?
Well, we have ChatGPT to help us. So then why do we need research if we have ChatGPT?
Did you listen to my session? I caught you.
Yeah, true that, true that. Well, I'd say in my experience, often we don't do research, but sometimes we end up having something that works without research at all. So this is why I put this question, because whenever I insist of, hey guys, first we need to do a little bit of discovery, because we have known unknowns, but also unknown unknowns. So can we do a little bit of research? Can I ask for some budget about that? And usually the answer is no. So this is why I ask, like, how do you usually fight? And how you usually, bring the arguments why this matters?
Nothing's perfect.
For sure, but that won't convince me. That won't convince my stakeholders.
Of course it wouldn't, but there is always room for improvement, and if we really want to serve our users, our customers, if we want to do the best for them, then we need to know what's working and what's not for them, because we have the educated incapacity, if you know what it is, and sometimes we don't see the forest behind the tree.
Yeah, but sometimes the stakeholders, they think they see this forest, and they may be blind, but again, that's not an argument that I will bring on the table that will get me some budget. So
I would start answering that by actually the mission statement of my user research team, which is to drive customer and business value through high quality, high impact research. I found that when it comes to situations or environments in which chancing it is probably bringing results every once in a while, so why bother with the research? Telling a powerful story about the risk and the cost of continuing to do that is quite the way to move the conversation further. There is a cost that is associated to chancing it and things not working. There is a cost associated to doing the wrong thing and things really, really not working. There is a cost associated to someone else, a competitor, doing it first. And so it is, well, I do work in insurance, so risk and cost are, a way to talk about stuff that is easy to comprehend, but it's definitely a way that I have found impactful.
all right, great answer, yeah. May I ask, Adele, for example, what you're gonna say if you're speaking to an organization that haven't done research, they don't have a research team at all, and you just stumble on a chance that they will change that. So what will you say to those stakeholders? Like, how are you gonna win them?
Okay, so I've had this situation before, luckily. At one of the previous companies that I worked at, it was all designers, and they would design their products and just push it out and then get pushed back, or the engagement's low, things like that. And basically what I started to do is to sell research. Just to ask them, give me 3 days. Just give me 3 days. I want to talk to 5 people, baseline of 5 participants. Back then it was 7, apologies, 7 participants. And 3 days later, I'll never forget that I sat in the boardroom and the stakeholders walked in, all chatting to each other, not taking any notice of me. I've got the beautiful presentation up on the board. This is before South African POPIA, which is close to your GDPR, same thing as GDPR. Back then, we could still show the videos from the participants, and they were talking to each other, completely different conversation, and I'm sitting there quietly waiting for them. And by the time they actually sat down, 15 minutes has passed. So I started my presentation, I gave them context, and I started playing back the video. And the room went quiet, just literally by them looking and seeing how other people actually use their product. That's why it's so valuable to actually have recordings, and I miss the days of recordings, so that I can show you. You think that you've got a product that actually works, based on what? Who did you talk to? You know where the on-off button is, right? But does your users know that? And it's an eye-opener if you can show something small, and I'm not saying picking at the biggest issues, something small, and showing them that value, and eventually, it'll take a year or 2, in my case it took 2, then people will start to ask, we're not taking this live before we actually test it. One small thing, just showing one small thing, and just getting them to see that and sit back and go,
Oh, I love that. Petya, what about you? Because I think for you it's kind of the day-to-day job to challenge that, and you know, you're working with companies, outsourcing research as a practice.
Yes, well, we normally do that at the design stage. So when the design is ready, this is when we have those conversations with our clients, thanks to the partnership that we have with some design studios. And the conversation is usually very easy.
Ooh,
Yes.
how comes?
Well, you know, there's this saying or statistics even sometimes. You can see that at the design stage, it's really cheaper to fix something.
Yeah.
When it's developed, it's
Mhm.
a lot more expensive. That's one thing that is very convincing. And the other one is that some of the companies don't know exactly how their product is being used. So by being able to show them that, I think this is something else that...
But that's something are you saying that initially you don't sell research at all, but once the design starts and all of a sudden like, hey, you know, right now we have to do research?
No, no, it usually goes hand in hand. I mean, we speak about our product, but proper timing
that's agreed
is...
in the first phase, like when the negotiations are happening.
Yes.
Okay, okay. What will be your advice for the people, for example, who are freelancing designs or working as an outsourcers, how they could negotiate better that to include some kind of a research in their, in their work?
As Adele said, start small, show them the value, and then build relationships. Because this is what is going to bring you the business in the long term. Not one-offs, but relationships where your clients know you, when you know them, and things are going smoothly and fast. And you prove your value over time, and then you get bigger and bigger projects.
Lovely, well said. Okay, I'm gonna bring the conversation in another direction. Let's start, I mean, it's a question to all of you, but let's start with Vicky. So what does democratizing user research mean to each one of you? Or why is it such a hot topic today?
So there are a lot of elements to it, and a lot of stuff is going on, especially in the public discussion that is going on in the last couple of years. But first of all, to me, democratization means that you teach and delegate bits and parts of the research process to other folks that may not be particularly trained in that craft. There's way more to it, but that's my definition of it for now. I personally, so there's this research operations framework that we typically use in research. It has 6 stages. We include things like advocacy and teaching others what we do and what methods we use. But I think this has the potential to be the next element in this framework that we use in the future, which is a completely next level of opening up the practice to everybody else and letting it in. I think we've been doing that forever, but it's now the public conversation feels like researchers have been gatekeeping the process of democratization. And I feel like that's not completely fair to be said. So we're also getting a lot of negative kind of responses and attention to our role right now for being gatekeepers. But I think that has never been the case. We've just been very careful and mindful because it's not a process that you complete overnight. And I feel like how we talk about democratization recently has been very one-sided and very surface level. So I'll stop here too.
Raya, do you want to add something?
Yep, I hate the term democratizing research, not the concept, the term. To me, it only validates existing stereotypes about what research is and how researchers are, which is, as Vicky said, gatekeepers of the research, gatekeepers of the customer, and we've never been that. So I prefer, and what we use in my team is the term controlled enablement. So we're kind of taking the power, taking the control back, and controlled enablement is very much about enabling the right people who are currently working on the right problems to have the right tools and skills to be self-sufficient in the research that they do. So the product designers who need to have access to the tools that are going to enable them to be self-sufficient in building the thing right, and also have the coaching that we have provided in order to be able to do that, they are able to do that. The product managers who are working on a kind of problem that they need to have some access to customers to speak to answer some high-level questions and have a bit of coaching on how to have that conversation well. That's also part of that. We have a peer review practice that all of the people who do research are subject to, as well as the researchers themselves. So also participating in that and having these sort of practices in place. So not a fan of the term, but generally supportive of the concept with a layer of purposefulness to it.
All right. Petya, have it happened that you have done research together with your customers, for example, in them participating in user interview session, asking questions along with you?
No.
Okay.
No, but we always go through a process where we define the questions and define what exactly do we plan to do and what's the goal of this research. So in a way they are participating, and I'm happy to say that I see more and more clients being more educated and more knowledgeable about what it is and how it's done and what to expect at the end as a report.
All right, so you're building the strategy alongside, but then you're executing because you're the expert in those cases. Nice, yeah, makes sense. Adele, what about in discovery? Are other people doing research besides the user research team?
Oh, we invite them. We invite everybody, actually. We don't tell you, listen, oh, here's a cheat sheet of how to go and do research. It's a very specialized niche field. You have to know what you're doing, but gatekeeping has been a problem. And like I've mentioned before, people don't like sharing their expertise. It's not every day that you get somebody that shares. So within discovery, we actually advocate for that. So if there's a developer or a BA, I've got many, many BAs that ask to be part of our research studies and just sit and observe. And afterwards they go like, oh, I didn't know, this is so awesome. What can I do to further my skills? And we'll send out a sheet of courses that they can do, for instance. And we've got mentorship programs. I last year completed the mentorship program for an individual that actually signed up. And just to see that individual grow from that, not just in the field of research, not them now going out doing research, but grow in their own field by learning these skills and just opening it up to everybody else. Skills that we've mentioned, empathy, listening, observing, planning, how to communicate effectively. I think it's really important. But we also have to be very careful who we place the skills in, whose hands we place the skills into. Because it's not just anybody that can go ahead and do it. You need that support. But yeah, I wouldn't close the door on anybody if they are interested. Definitely come observe, but you have to be willing to learn.
Yeah, and what I stumbled on when I joined the organization, PMs, designers, we're all doing research. But I saw, and something that concerns me, and I want to ask you, because there were some things that when it comes to GDPR, to privacy, and stuff like that, that were not followed. And what are your thoughts on the potential ethical risk of democratization within an organization? Who want to take that?
Okay, I'll start. I think any risk can be mitigated if we just follow the same process. So what we did back in VMware, as we were a very large company, anyone, if they're interested in finding out anything, anyone could do research in a way. You can't have control over that. Like you can go to people and tell them, don't be interested in how the business is working, how the market is working, and what users think, in a broader level sense. So we had mandatory privacy trainings for roles that were potentially more involved in stuff like that, just looking at data, having access to data in general. So you might not be directly conducting research and going to users and storing some information on your own, but even having access to stuff can be a potential risk, so we all gotta know how to be careful about that. And we know at least some stuff about what our company policy for data retention is, how many months are we allowed to store users' data, and things like that. I know it sounds very overwhelming always, GDPR and laws and stuff like that, so most people don't need to know the details about these things, but just know the very simple rules on how to handle data, how to delete data effectively when you need to do that, and we'll be all good. And if you have questions, usually companies have legal teams who actually establish these rules, so we can always kind of work with them as well.
Well, in my case, literally nobody was asking the participants if they consent to be recorded. And I was like, what? So how would you educate a company to start doing that if there's no, for example, I'm a manager in this company and I reach out to you because I know you're an expert, and what are you gonna advise me that I start to do so I can educate my colleagues on, hey guys, let's do this in a better way?
You should have a GDPR procedure in place. I mean,
Okay.
simple steps like getting the consent, explaining how much time you're going to keep, what kind of data are you going to collect, how are you going to use it, who's going to see it. And it doesn't need to be super complicated.
Yeah.
A one-pager that really explains exactly what you're going to do with this data and for how long is more than enough, and then they, of course, have the right to consent or to not consent.
Yeah, but my colleagues didn't knew at all because they just heard, okay, we need to do some user research. Let's get on a call with our customers. We're going to ask them certain stuff, but nothing about that. How do you educate people and how do you make them, aware that they should follow certain practices? Like, Raya, can you?
I guess it's part of that control enablement mindset, because you're only putting access to different things in a very kind of purposeful and systematic way. It just becomes part of the coaching and the transfer of these skills. So in terms of doing these types of activities, that's just part of the program, if you will. It's part of the lessons that are given before you can go out in the wild and do things yourself. And then on kind of a larger organizational scale, I work in a financial services company, so it's very, very strictly monitored and reviewed who has access to what at any point in time.
But then, what about the bias of a non-educated researchers? Like, okay, I have a confirmation bias because I just confirmed what I wanted to. I asked similar questions. Adele, how do you handle this?
It's unfortunately one of those things that exists specifically in smaller companies as well. The one researcher band kind of scenario. You don't know what you don't know. Going back to the previous thing that you asked about as well. If you are not aware that you have to do certain things, you're going to do what you think is best, right? So that is why certain things are in place, and ChatGPT is there. I know we've said this so many times. You can always ask ChatGPT, what can happen to me if I do X, Y, and Z, for instance, and you specify South Africa or wherever. I would say it's something to take great care of. Usually, risk, legal compliance, and data privacy, those are the departments within Discovery make sure on a yearly that our things are in place. And before anybody is allowed to sit with us in any kind of research, they have to go through an NDA. They have to read that NDA and sign that NDA, and I save that NDA so that that person knows no personal information or any customer information is saved on their local machine. Everything is saved on the company drive. Everything is there. These things need to be in place, but there is a risk. If you don't know, then you'll run into a problem, and the easiest way to learn is the hard way, unfortunately, when they walk in and go,
But then, isn't that too much that you need to learn in advance in order to start doing research if you want to do it properly? So then probably most of the people will just back off and, okay, we're just going to continue what we're doing in the same way we do it. Vicky?
Oh, that's what democratization is. It's giving everybody the ability and the access to it. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to do user research. Just like if you have read some books about surgery, you're not going to go and operate on someone. You need to have some basic skills in place, and you need to educate yourself in advance, and you need to know what risks you're going to run into.
And I think it kind of goes back to what Adele just said. It's if you want to do this extra thing, if you want to take this responsibility, then you have to be willing to also do some extra work that comes with it. It's kind of it's a mutual agreement that we're making here. I will give you the coaching, the skill, the access to customers, the tools, but you have to commit to doing things in a certain way.
Yeah, I agree. It's, I guess, in terms of trusting the people that they're gonna do the right thing otherwise. Yeah.
I can give one tip, because it sounds like researchers are always perfect and remember everything, and they're amazing at handling privacy information and stuff like that, but we are all people and we all tend to forget stuff. So having a person who's responsible to remind everybody else to regularly, delete certain data that's already gone past through its time period that it's allowed, reminding everybody to anonymize sessions, go back and do all of these things. It's really important. We also tend to forget this stuff because we're busy with handling everything, so appointing responsibilities really helps manage these processes, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, then the next question is, what would happen if companies that used to started to democratize their research at some point start to use it as a cost-cutting measure and maybe reduce the demand for UX research? Adele, you're laughing.
Oh, gosh. There's always, like I said in the beginning, it's good to share, and it's good to open up the doors and say, yeah, come in, you can come and sit and learn and do this with us, but there's always that risk that they'll go, oh, okay, now X, Y, and Z can also do research, so we don't need you and you and you and you. It's almost like that joke where the guy asked, they couldn't get this boat to work, right? Been working on this months and months and months, and they didn't want to spend money to get this boat to work. And then eventually they decided to get the specialist, and the specialist came in and he took a walk around and hammer, and he hit here and he hit over there, and boom, boat works. And he charged them, let's say, $10,000 for that. And the guy went, what, you worked on it for 5 minutes? And the guy said, yes, but it took me 20 years to learn how to do it in 5 minutes. There's risk in it. So you can be walking around that boat and trying to find the answers for it, but if you don't have the expertise and you don't have access to experts, then you're going to struggle.
Yeah. However, I again think that some companies at some point they may, because come on, we already, everyone sees that one of the first departments in a laying of practice are the user research, unfortunately. Why is that? Why do you think is that?
I think there have been multiple factors to that. And I don't think that only democratizing research or only something else, we can attribute that to being the cause. We're obviously just coming out of a very tough period of a lot of tech redundancies, with researchers, UXers being disproportionately affected by that. But it was also a period of a bit of an uncontrolled boom of these roles as well. I saw so many teams and kind of peers in the field joining companies where the research team was set up to fail in how they were set up, in the responsibilities that they were given, in the lack of success metric. And then when you're put in this position, and then when the company is doing the cost-cutting measures, they kind of go very much down to the bottom line, and it's very difficult to show the value of what you've been doing when that value hasn't been working for you to begin with. There's been a bit of that for sure, but I also want to put a bit of the responsibility on us, and especially on research leaders as well, because it is our responsibility to in these environments actually go ahead and set those success metrics and communicate what it is that we're doing and link it to the larger story and to the bigger picture Sylvia was talking about earlier today, and show that balance between customer and business value and talk about metrics and be really, really adept at all of these various aspects of the business in order to advocate for the effectiveness and the value of a research function.
I agree, but you know, I have a great example of such in my previous company. I don't know, maybe some of you know this guy, Ari Zelmanov. He's a great user researcher, becoming quite famous now. But so he was leading the user research team at Quantive back when I was working there, and they were doing all of that. They were amazing. But then all of a sudden, this team was gone, and I can't explain myself why.
What happened next?
They were like all of the users experience designers started doing research, but the good part is that they shared with us a lot of knowledge and a lot of practice, and I can confidently say that my research skills so far, everything I've learned was from him and his team, and this made me very, very successful as a way better designer because I understand more the role and how, hey man, how I miss having a researcher. Oh, that hurts. So, Petya, I have one question for you. In your experience, have you managed to consult a company, execute search and research activities for them, and then observe how at some point they begin to try achieve something internally as well, and maybe asking for your advisory from time to time?
Yes, actually.
Can you give an example? Can you share a little bit more, please? I think it's going to be very valuable for the public here.
It's a big bank.
Okay.
But it's reasonable for them because they have many platforms. So bringing a team inside is something very reasonable. So why not?
And you were the reason that you showed them, like.
I don't know if we were the reason that we showed them, because you can learn a lot nowadays online and talking to peers. So I cannot say with certainty that we showed them, but they saw the value of user research and now they're doing it regularly and still working with us.
All right, but in the working, like they hire you because their team can handle, or rather educate their team better? Like what's the case?
No, it's more a matter of capacity.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. All right, I have to ask that, you know, how do you think AI can help on bringing more people into research, even that they're not researchers? Vicky?
I touched on that a little bit in my talk, but yeah, I think it can be a really useful tool for you to start training and experimenting and just testing what the process of asking question is like and analyzing a response and giving an answer back, giving a question back. So I think at least with the people that I've worked with that had less experience, this was one of the most paralyzing stages for them, being in a live conversation and reacting and adapting to anything that's given to them back as a response, and maintaining this ability to still ask open questions, you know, not grab for very specific words and not bias and, you know, not push it too much. So it has potential for that, for just practicing. And I found it also really useful for finding resources. So if you want to learn more about what's a diary study, how do you run one, what's the benefits of it, you can search for it, and it actually will bring you back some pretty good articles, and yeah, just start from there and help you start learning more. So for now, at least, these are the more safer, I'd say, areas that it could help with democratization, and it does already help. People tend to use it a lot for desk research and outlining research plans and stuff like that. But again, if you're very new to this, I'd say be cautious and consult if you don't feel comfortable, or be very critical about what it gives you back. Don't use it as is. So.
You know, I have a great example. My PMs, when they do research without me, they tend to ask leading questions or yes or no. And what I told them, like, hey guys, here's my ChatGPT account. Just ask them to refine those questions so they're open-ended and they're not a yes, no. And this works like magic. Like, that's something that I give to all of you as an advice if somebody, or even if you are in the challenge to create questions for some kind of a research, just ask ChatGPT to, hey, can you identify if they're leading questions or yes or no, and he'll do the magic for that. Raya, what do you think about AI? Would it help or?
I would refer to an episode of Lenny's podcast, also mentioned earlier by Sibel, with the Chief Product Officer of Intercom. And Intercom is a company that is really at the forefront of AI and customer service. And he was saying that you have to basically break down your product into what it does for your customer. And I think you can apply that to break down what the user research does for the customer, being, you know, various different types of customer, really. And then you kind of go, what can AI do currently already that it can just do? What can it assist me with? What can it absolutely not do at all at this point in time? And we should be doing ourselves. And I think about how AI fits into the research picture in the same way, like mundane tasks like interview transcripts and stuff like that, for sure, hand it over. This is not a good use of your time. AI can do it. Drafts of study designs and things like that, assistant, however, base it on really well-designed learning goal and hypothesis, your job, not AI's job. So you kind of break it down in these tasks and you can go, AI can do it fully, AI can assist me in some way. This is where it is absolutely my job, my skill, my critical thinking that needs to be doing the bulk of the work.
Yeah, I agree. Petya?
Yes.
And do you use AI when you do research? No.
No.
Why?
I don't. I don't know.
Is there a reason you haven't thought about it, or?
No, I have thought about it, but I haven't felt the need to do that. And I have a great team that's fantastic, and we can bounce ideas off each other and spot each other's blind spots and biases. So
I know you weren't here, but watch after that Vicky's presentation. She just showed that you can achieve literally 40% increase without any effort at all. So I guess 40% increase is a great thing to do. Could companies benefit of outsourcing the research instead of democratizing it? What do you think?
Of course they can. I mean, when you're democratizing it within your organization, this means that you're transferring tasks that are not inherently for this position, for example, the project managers or the designers. So you're running into the risk of losing productivity in those areas of your business. Whether you should democratize or outsource, that's a business decision that every company needs to make. But outsourcing is an option.
Definitely, but I believe many companies doesn't even know that they can do that. So what's your advice? For example, there are people here that wants to do, as a side hustle, some research. How can they, promote that within companies that are not the ones that they work for right now already, maybe?
Well, my advice would be get something in your portfolio that you can show those potential clients.
All right.
Prove your skills, and there is a lot of business. I don't think that.
Well said. Yeah, I like it. Adele, in your experience, is there a case, do you have an example where such initiative as democratization, letting more people, did more harm than good?
With people that's not qualified researchers that...
Yeah, like not experts, but you're bringing them because for some reason, I don't know.
My initial answer would be no, but there was a very long time ago where somebody put together a script and didn't make use of a senior or lead just to go through the script and make sure that everything is fine, and ended up asking a very unwelcomed question in the script to participants. And when I saw the feedback, I literally cringed. I cannot mention the question, and I cannot mention the participant type, but it could have been avoided by simply going over the script and making sure. So again, coming back to what I've been saying quite a lot of times, check your work, don't be afraid for feedback, because you can avoid difficult situations and asking questions to people, to participants who you do not know, and they might leave being harmed at the end of the day. And it could have been avoided if that person went through with the script with the senior at that stage. So yes and no. I'm since then very aware, always very aware, very friendly, very careful when we approach, just to say, take it past us, just take it past us. Even ChatGPT, but ChatGPT doesn't have that emotional aspect, so wouldn't know where a human would know. You do not ask that type of question to an individual in that situation. I wish I could tell you what it was, but I unfortunately cannot. But yeah, it was damaging, simply because of one step that was missed.
I can imagine, yeah. Vicky, Raya, something in your experience in terms of doing more harm than good?
I guess, yeah, I have experiences in doing the controlled enablement thing and providing the coaching and providing the guidance, and maybe the person being coached showing every, good intention of doing things right, and then going off in the real world and then asking those biased questions and asking those close questions and really liking their idea and posing it in such a way so that people like it too, and reporting on that. I guess my experience in these situations have been, it's not a bad thing for a researcher to step in, repeat it in a way that is the more appropriate way, compare the results, and then kind of show, don't tell sort of approach. Again, I think we mentioned that in the beginning. I don't think that they do it in a malicious way in any way. I think, as we said, we're all humans, we get excited about things, but I so far have found that the best thing is to go, let's do it again, and then maybe let's do it together, and maybe you come and watch me, and maybe I watch you and give you some feedback afterwards.
I think if it's not patented, that's your framework of yours, and if you share it to the broad public, that will be very, very helpful to a lot of companies.
I also don't want you to think that we've got it right. We really don't. There's a lot of work to be done there, but I think the intention is there.
Okay, cool. Vicky, what would be the advice that you can give for researchers that are about to try to democratize user research within their organization?
As a person who's gone through this for the past 5 years, similar to Raya, in my previous company, I started as the first researcher on the team, and UX in general even wasn't very recognized and very appreciated. So both the research team and the design team, we were working together to, first of all, start popularizing what's the value of our work and why do we exist there? Why did someone spend the budget to hire a whole team and then expand it if nobody cares about it? So my advice would be to be prepared that the whole process happens in certain steps, and you can't really jump from one to another and have this leap forward, and it won't all happen that quickly as you'd probably wished. In some companies, maybe, if you work in a bigger company where a lot of changes are happening all the time, a lot of priorities switch all the time, even a lot of the people that you work with switch all the time, you might need to go back constantly and start the process all over again, because sometimes even one single person, one single product manager that you had established a really good relationship with enabled you to do so much more. If that person is gone suddenly, you might be in a situation where you need to start again from scratch. So be prepared that it's a process, and people might feel uncomfortable, people might fear this process, because what I've observed is that anytime We want to be more meticulous about tracking, collecting metrics, really putting up front what success means for us. People are kind of, oh, this might expose some difficulties that we have. And if the expectation of your company is you need to deliver good stuff all the time, money up all the time, it kind of creates this environment of mistrust. So it's hard to just jump in and say, let's all just start to do it, you know. So people will find you as an enemy rather than a friend sometimes.
Okay, but what are those steps? Please give us a cheat,
sure.
a cheat code.
Sure, of course. So first of all, find folks who are already somewhere close to our users to begin with, and start talking to them. Learn from them because they actually know a lot and they already probably have some practices established in place. Maybe they're not standardized research practices, but they have access to users, so you need to be communicating with these people to begin with. So maybe start exchanging knowledge and maybe start from there and start creating a small community that shares more of these practices. And later on, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say office hours and stuff like that, but these help at some point when you have more people interested in that. Just have dedicated sessions to present some of your work, show parts of the process, invite some folks to watch sessions with you and just open up a bit more. And this usually helps and people actually get pretty excited about it. It can be scary because not everybody, you know, reads these with an open mind, so they might be like, oh, this user just doesn't know how this works. It's their fault. So it can be tricky, but yeah, true small steps like that, I think.
Great advice,
Yeah.
great advice. Thank you. Raya?
Sometimes you actually, it just reminded me, you have the most surprising reactions. Like just this week, someone from my team was running a session that had 20 people come to it. Like the interest was very big. And it was the session that the participant didn't turn up, of course. Like that was the one. And then she had to go, oh, this next session is happening then. Can you come to that one? And by the way, some very senior people also observing this one. And then they came to the next one, and the next session, technical difficulties, like they couldn't hear the participant for the first 10 minutes, figured it out, had a good session. They were quite, you know, worried about how that might have looked, especially for that very senior person who was there. Then the feedback from the senior person was like, oh my God, you have to deal with so much like complications. This is really impressive. And then you deal with them so professionally, and then you fix the technical difficulties, and then you manage to reschedule the participants. And I was like, yeah, look, like they're really kind of getting to the gist of the kind of stuff that we deal with day in and day out. And it wasn't a negative at all, that experience for them. They gained some interesting insight.
All right. I love that. Okay. Adele. On the opposite, like, in your experience, what are the strategies that haven't worked well? If there are any.
Nothing that I can think of at the moment.
Everything works.
It works perfectly.
Oh. Then how do you achieve that?
Growth mind, learning mindset, put it that way. Openness to share and openness for feedback. It's not easy, especially for the youngsters. People take things personally, and once you've learned and gone through the motions of, you know what, feedback's actually good and I can grow from that, having that growth mindset and being open for constructive criticism, and I'm not talking about personal opinions, very important to differentiate between those two. Your personal opinion doesn't matter, but your professional one does matter. So be careful of the type of feedback that you do take, but be open to it as well.
If you don't mind, can you give us just an example of something that you have done that worked really well and inspired many people, or some spark in them at least?
I wrote a book. Put all of that in a book.
Purchase Adele's book.
That's it. I'm open to sharing, and people have grown and learned so much from that. Things that they didn't know, well, that's the feedback that I get. If you don't agree with me, I'm always open to hear why and what your input and all of that is. But be open to share. That's what I would say. And don't be scared to write a book, people. Don't be scared to write that article and share your knowledge, because there's others, even sitting between us here, that are sponges and are hungry to know what and how and where, and too scared to ask. So, and you are sitting with all the information. Put it out there, and don't be afraid to get some feedback. Some of it will be positive, some of it will be negative. It's okay.
Love it. Petya, in your experience, when you're presenting the research, the findings, the insight, or in your suggestion on what to do after that, like, do you ask them to bring into those sessions somebody else besides the decision makers for those projects that you worked on? Like, do you bring somebody else?
We don't ask them, but they usually have a very wide audience at those presentations. They're quite lengthy, sometimes 2 hours.
Okay.
And there are questions always, a lot of questions, a lot of discussion, what should be done and what shouldn't be done, because for some findings we provide options.
And if you can share, of course, that, because I assume that many of this work is confidential, but can you give an example where you received an odd and a bad response based on your findings, like somebody did not agree on that, or I don't know?
There is no bad response. There is business priorities versus user priorities.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes business priorities prevail. And many of the times user priorities prevail. So no, I cannot give you a bad example. I don't have one.
Okay. Okay, I love it actually, but that's all politically correct. Adele, if there for some reason here is a stakeholder, business owner that came to this conference to consider user research, or somebody else that we're going to have this on YouTube and is going to watch that, what would be the advice that you'd give to this decision maker towards user research?
Please clarify. This person is just coming here to see what the value of research is. What's the question? Just clarify for me.
Sorry, can you go ahead?
No, just asking to clarify the question.
Yeah, so let's imagine that here's a business owner, a CEO of a company. They don't do research at all. What would be the advice you're going to give them right now if they just seeking and wondering, hey, should I start doing research right now?
Well, the fact that they're here is step number one. They might probably ask, how do I start, kind of scenario, because they're already here, right? If they weren't here, for instance, I would ask them to come. Knowledge is key, of course. Creating awareness, I would say, is that. I had a conversation earlier on with an individual, and we're going to take that convo further, about stakeholders that feel you conduct research and then the feedback that comes back, no, it's not the user, it's not the right user. So it's typically that kind of mindset, and I feel that this is the reason why we are here. We are sharing these kinds of stories in order to create awareness, because there are stakeholders out there, business owners that think, I've created this thing and it works, right? My answer, I wish I had ChatGPT. My answer would be proof. The fact that there are people holding these titles and there's people sitting in this room talking about this already shows that there's value in having research. And again, start small. You don't have to spend a lot of money. In fact, just give me 3 days to show something. In fact, I can show you at this conference with 5 people. I can test your product or idea, not even a product, it's even as an idea, by asking 7 questions. And I can give you feedback. I've showcased that with asking 2 questions. And it's a wealth of information that you can provide just by simply spending, how long did it take me? 20 minutes and sifting through it. So it's doable, it's completely doable. That stakeholder, I'll play with him to show the value of that.
I love that argument. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to use this sometime. Raya, what would be the advice you're going to give to a person who wants to begin their journey, their career in UX research right now?
I think that there's a wealth of very generous mentors around. I know that a lot of them are in this room who are giving their time and giving their expertise, and I would definitely advise people to take advantage of that and to reach out and to take as much as they can from this knowledge and this advice, but also from creating the connections. I appreciate that it's a very tough time to be starting your career in research right now. Everyone is looking for seniors, and we're still kind of recovering from that unfortunate period in the last 2 years. So I would start there, because not only is it building your network, you're actually getting some very, very valuable advice on what to do and how to do it well and how to present yourself as well to a potential employer.
So basically getting advices on how to build your brand, because I think it's very crucial to build your own brand as a researcher right now. I mean, it's for designer also, but for researcher it's even harder. So yeah, thank you. And Vicky, what would be your advice to the UX designers?
On how to start, if they're interested. The same question, right?
Whatever advice you think you should give to a UX designer right now.
Sure. So I believe that research is an essential skill for all human beings to begin with. So it has helped me not only throughout my career, but also in my personal life, and just making me a more knowledgeable and more context-aware person to begin with. So I hope that inspires you in a way, but if you have a question that you've always wondered and you don't have an answer, I just nudge you to start slowly speaking it and just experimenting. It doesn't have to be in a work environment. If you feel pressured and you feel afraid of the risk and that you might fail, so we can do research anytime. So we can just pick a topic that's very interesting to us, and we can find a segment that we're not very sure or aware of, and we can start experimenting from there. You're all allowed to meet new people and talk to new people and contact people, so the internet helps a lot as well. So you can reach out and you can start experimenting from there if you feel like starting in a business environment might be scarier. So I know it's outside of work context, but I've done that in the past, and it has helped me a lot to gain confidence.
Great advice. Yeah, I know I teach Figma, but it's not just about the interfaces. So sometimes we have to do research, because that's UX. We have to be analytical and curious. So yeah, I cannot but just agree with you. And Petya, what would be your advice for somebody who wants to start doing this on freelance, or make an agency and outsource research? Like, maybe you gave an advice, but then what would be the common pitfalls that you have stumbled throughout your career?
I gave the advice, like learn the skill first, and then do some pro bono work. If you're looking to find a place in a company, bring your portfolio, pick the minds of those amazing people that are already working there, see what you're not doing correctly. And if you're looking to start your company, learn how to sell.
Yeah, but that's not a research skill.
It's not a research skill, but there are so many interconnected skills when you're doing user research. So it's not just research, pure research.
And freelance comes with other things, so better get ready if you want to do it on freelance. Anything on freelance. All right, well, to be honest, ladies, I can sit here and talk with you until tomorrow, but I guess we have a schedule to follow. So thank you for the pleasant conversation. It was really amazing to have you here. Thanks for accepting my invitation. Thanks, everyone. I hope you find this talk and this discussion quite interesting. I hope every one of you gets something with you today and try to apply it, or just being inspired to how to improve what you do on a day-to-day basis. So again, thank you, everyone, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.